For our last keynote of the day, please welcome the CEO of Tropicana Brands and Mainstream, Monica McGurk. She will be interviewed by Groceryshop Senior Vice President of Content, Krystina Gustafson.
I think, Monica, you've already raised the bar for being brand right with the music, the jacket. You're setting a high bar for everyone else.
Have to rep the brand.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the keynote stage, and welcome back, everyone. Really excited to be having this conversation with you here today. And I think let's just dive right in, because everyone knows Tropicana Brands Group and what you guys stand for. But I think what a lot of people might not be familiar with is just how much has changed over the past couple of years with you guys. It's been 2 years since PepsiCo sold off a controlling stake in the business, and about 1 year since you have been in the CEO seat. So talk to us a little bit about who TBG is today.
Sure, Krystina. So 2 years ago, TBG, Tropicana Brands Group, was formed as a carve-out of PepsiCo as a joint venture between the PE firm PAI, the majority owner, and PepsiCo, which retains a minority interest. And it was simply formed to unleash the potential of this incredible portfolio of brands. Think Tropicana, Dole, Naked, Izzy, Kavita, great juice-based brands with super heritage history that have a lot of upside potential ahead of them. The formation of this company as a standalone company enables us to leverage that portfolio, mine that deep heritage of juice expertise, couple it with R&D, insights, innovation, a really superior security of supply and supply chain, and marry all of that kind of legacy strength with the mandate to be bold, agile, and entrepreneurial to unlock the potential. So it's a really exciting time for the brands. As you've mentioned, I've been there for 1 year, so just had the anniversary last week. And we're just starting to see the green shoots of what this company can do.
Yeah, it's really exciting. And you hear a lot in this industry, people talking about being, a legacy company with a startup mindset. But it feels like that is actually what's happening at TBG. Could you talk to us a little bit about, how you are really sort of embracing that legacy business that you talked about with this new innovation mindset?
Yeah. The purpose of the company is to nourish and delight one sip at a time. And for us to deliver that to our consumers every day is what we live for. The challenge is around speed. So what we've done in our company is a couple of unique things, leaning out an agile work model, bigger roles for people. So you might not have a deep depth chart of layers like you might have in a traditional company. You might have maybe a bit of an ambiguous job description, which enables you to do a lot of cross-functional project work, team together to get things quickly out the door. And by challenging old ways of thinking and old ways of working and getting the right tools in people's hands, we can move really quickly. We've had innovations ready for a market test in 6 weeks, as an example, which is really hard to do coming from a series of legacy companies. That's not always the case, but it does require purposeful effort to unlock that potential. And it requires people to be really good at understanding what risks are worth leaning into and which ones actually require a level of precision and risk management that might be more appropriate.
It's interesting to hear you talk about ambiguous job roles, because I'm hearing that, and it's not even me on your team. I'm stressed. I'm like, what do I do? How do I know if I'm doing well? How do you actually think about leading an organization and giving them the confidence that they can test these new things and aren't, quite frankly, just kind of, nervous about what all this change might mean for them?
Yeah, great question. Change management is what all of us as leaders do every day. And at the start of it, it's very clear strategy and focus. You can't be lean if you're asking people to do everything. And I see some of my team members here, and so the front rows, you're nodding and saying, yes, you're still asking us to do a lot. But it's about taking away the things that aren't going to be value added and really focusing on what's going to drive the business as a start. So we have a very clear strategy, very clear metrics. We steward that back on a performance basis all the time, monthly town halls, team meetings, things of that nature. So the direction is really, really clear. Getting people on board with that direction is partly telling them what's in it for me. And as all of us have experienced, different people are motivated by different things. So for some, the motivation comes from having an ownership stake in this company, right? An opportunity for wealth creation that's maybe unique in their experience. For others, it's the excitement of those teams, the agile experience, the types of projects that they get to work on. For others, it's the connection with the purpose and recognizing the nutritional value of the brands in our portfolio, which is unique in some cases. Others might be excited about the experience itself, the job experience they get by going through these agile learning experiences. And then there's the data side of things, where we are building something really unique in terms of the data assets and the tools that we're putting in people's hands to enable them to do their work quickly, efficiently, and to great success.
When you talk about taking things away from people, what does that mean? Is it sort of identifying inefficiencies in the organization? Is it, taking away specific tools that maybe aren't bearing the same fruit that they once did? Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. I should say we, the leadership, don't take things away as much as our teams tell us what they don't need and what's not working. As we're standing up our new data warehouse, for example, we've got a lot of data enablement, new reporting tools, a lot of self-service capability. As we go through that, we can start to identify what work people were doing to do all of this bespoke reporting in the past that we don't need anymore. So it kind of falls away naturally. Sometimes we can turn things off to enable it, move it along a little bit faster. But it starts with that stop, start, continue mindset with the team and asking the question of, what would it take for us to move faster? What would it take for us to make this an even more efficient experience for you?
Yeah, and it's interesting too. I know you and I have talked in the past about a lot of this. You guys are actually really building from the ground up, which I think a lot of folks in the room would love, the opportunity to just kind of tear things up and start over again. But again, I'm stressed. I'm thinking about how much work this really entails. It's quite a bit. You're talking about looking at new platforms, new capabilities, people, process. There's just so many different directions that you could go. So when you are given that kind of opportunity, where do you even begin?
Well, it all starts with the customer and the consumer at the end of the day. That is the North Star for our strategy. So thinking about what is the need in the marketplace that we have yet to fulfill guides our strategic focus. Then from a practical standpoint, what does it take to be an independent company and carve yourself out of PepsiCo? One of the big things is being stood up on an independent ERP system. And that forces a lot of opportunity onto us, even though it might be, to your point, sometimes a little bit stressful. So we're going through the process of getting onto our own instance of S/4HANA. That creates an opportunity to do something really radical, which is be in this really big company, multi-billion-dollar company, act like a startup, and design it from scratch to be data-enabled and AI-enabled. So thinking about that tech stack from the very beginning, stewarding the data, mastering it based on where we know we want to go, redesigning the processes from the very start so that we're not replicating some of the slower processes of the past. That's been a real big challenge, but a lot of fun and something that we think is going to pay off in spades.
And is there a specific example of a big unlock? I know, again, it's, you're 1 year into the role, but is anything really working well from those early investments?
Yeah, for sure. We've put a lot of emphasis on retailer data and getting basic analytics and reporting tools in place. So think self-service for anyone to be able to go in, and I mean truly anyone. It's not restricted who gets access to this data. Anyone could go in and see reports and figure out how are we doing on not just service rates, but what is the root cause? How are we on on-shelf availability? Is it locked up in inventory? Getting into the 5 whys really deep to drive performance. We have our own example of Trop GPT, which enables people to learn about the business based on what we have noticed to be common needs and inquiries, and it keeps learning and expanding off of the base that was put in place just a few months ago. So those are just a few examples. And then when we look ahead to where we're going, you can imagine all of the applications, automating and digitizing and ML enabling our planning processes, thinking really radically about how we use that capability to inform innovation from trend identification, concept generation, concept testing, to even formula optimization. So all of those things are part of our future. Some we're realizing right now, getting those quick wins on the way to the holy mountain. But we still got a lot of work to do.
Can you talk a little bit about Trop GPT? I love the name of that. But I mean, who's using that today? What are sort of the insights? I would imagine it's strictly for internal purposes now, but are you using it to sort of identify those sales trends you were talking about before? Are you using it in like contract negotiations, things like that? What are sort of the current capabilities there?
It's really more of an internally facing tool, but just think of it as natural language enabled. Type in your question, it recognizes your question, and it pops up the answer, and then you go from there. So people are using it for all sorts of different applications: performance management, trend identification, understanding brand histories. There are a ton of applications for it.
Yeah, it's really interesting too, as you're talking about that, and coupled with the fact that you are building so much of your business, quite frankly, and your tech stack and all your processes from scratch. Because one thing we've been hearing a lot about at Groceryshop is that generative AI is going to be such a transformative technology that it's going to require this all new business process design that you guys have the opportunity to delve into now. So, I mean, how much are you thinking about generative AI as you are making every single tech investment, every single decision across the organization?
Yeah. And there's a lot of discussion about this topic and what is real versus what is hype. But we can envision a lot of applications, whether it's sales training, getting that capability to support customer contact resolution. We can think about it for content generation, whether it's simple product shots or customization of creative at scale. All of the applications that I was talking about from a product innovation standpoint would rely on that capability, or in many cases it would. So we're being very thoughtful about it. We don't want to, over-rotate towards it, because some things you don't need that kind of complexity or capability. You can use some of the more basic analytic tools, but it is part of the toolkit that we're building out.
Yeah, it's always a challenge to think about, how heavily to lean into some of these trends. I think there are some that we don't need to name this year that were big a couple months ago that maybe have fallen out of the fore. So really, really delicate balance that you have to find there. I do want to spend a little bit more time talking about digital. We've talked a lot about data and analytics, but curious to hear, as you're thinking about your digital presence, what are you focusing on? Are you thinking about direct-to-consumer at all? Are you thinking more about how to optimize your partnerships with brick and mortar retailers? Would just kind of love to hear what you're prioritizing on that front.
Can I say yes?
Yes.
It sounds not very focused, but the chilled part of the grocery store has not been as advanced in moving over into e-commerce. So we do feel that we have some opportunity to improve the way we're showing up with our retail partners on that front. At the same time, as we stand up innovation, rapid testing is part of the model, and having some direct-to-consumer capability at a minimum to take self-extinguishing supply, see how it does in market, get the data, learn from that, rinse and repeat could be a great option. If we start to think about personalization, it's much easier to do that in a direct-to-consumer environment. But right now, I'd say the bread and butter focus is on getting the actual omni-commerce really singing for us.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I know we've talked a lot about prioritizations and just kind of, choosing where to make your investments. But I think, one thing that I'm also very cognizant of as I'm asking you these questions is the overall economic environment that we're in. We've talked already today about high inflation. You already mentioned PE ownership, which, as a lot of folks in this room know, also means debt. So how are you thinking about balancing your growth priorities with some of those economic and financial realities?
Yeah, great question. PAI has a great track record in the food and beverage sector, which is a great starting point for us. Over time, the market rewards sustained profitable growth, and we've got a great path to do that. So for us, it's not about timing the market, it's about delivering our plan, and we're really confident we've got the plan in place and the team in place to be able to pull that off.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's a good segue because I feel like we haven't actually talked about, physical product. We've been talking a lot about digital product, but let's shift gears and talk a little bit about your portfolio of brands. You mentioned at the beginning of the conversation a couple of the big, bold names that we all know, Tropicana, Dole, but you also have some of those smaller, let's call them maybe more emerging brands, as I think how you guys refer to it in the business. I'd love to hear about the synergies that you're seeing there. And I think in particular, just as we're in this environment where, not just Kroger and Ahold Delhaize are thinking about their overall portfolios, acquiring, divesting, is there really a reason for being for all of those brands in your portfolio today?
Sure. Each of the brands has a very clear role inside of the portfolio. You can imagine, right, the mothership of Tropicana, that's a massive profit pool. It's the legacy of the business. Stability, lower rates of growth are probably more what we have in mind for that brand. Mm-hmm. Other brands, like those in the emerging part of the portfolio, really have a lot of runway still for just basic distribution gains. And then when you look across the entire portfolio, there are some pretty significant differences. Take something basic like juice content. They range from 5% to 100% juice content. That enables them to play in different occasions and need states. It could be from hydration to more nourishment, meal accompaniment. So as we think about the portfolio and how to deploy it, there's still a lot of room for channel exploration, occasion expansion, all of which is supported not just by the core, but by innovations against those brands. So it's a really great synergy, but what is beautiful about it is they're complementary in many cases. They are adding something truly incremental in the retail case to the retailer. They're playing a unique role at the grocery store in that moment of truth. So we like the portfolio, and we think you have a lot of upside with it.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And it also just kind of makes me think about the juice category overall, right? It was something that was doing incredibly well during the pandemic when people were spending a lot of time at home, maybe having a lot of brunch, and just kind of spending time with family. But overall, it's a category that, quite frankly, has been quite challenged over the past couple of decades. Consumers maybe don't necessarily view it with that same health and wellness lens that they perhaps did a couple years back. So could you dig a little bit deeper into that product excitement and maybe the roles that these emerging brands play there?
Sure. So when we talk about the juice category, I think we have to unpack it a little bit because not all juices are the same. And when we talk about a decline or a slow growth category, we're really talking about core orange juice. And that has been driven by a complicated set of factors, including some supply chain things in the past. You're rightfully pointing out the big COVID bump. That, to me, is a proof point. There's still a need out there for consumers, whether it's enjoying it in the right occasion, understanding the benefits, the health benefits of it, right? So 40% of US adults still don't get the amount of vitamin C they need for optimal body functioning. Still, 40%, that's like crazy. So there's a need there. It's up to the business to meet consumers where they are at, remind them of all the benefits, the positive nutrition, 20 micronutrients in every serving, more potassium than a banana in every serving. These are things that are real positives about juice, core orange juice, that we don't often talk about. So we need to remind of those. We need to be relevant in culture. So if you think about things like the Tropicana mimosa maker, the Crunch cereal, the toothpaste, those are all award-winning brand acts that reminded consumers of the relevance of Tropicana in their lives in a lighthearted way that refreshed the brand and made it seem a little bit more young and modern. So that's part of the play as well. At the end of the day, all of these brands have a reason to resonate with the consumers. We see lots of growth opportunities just from the distribution and occasion penetration. And anything that's a perceived barrier, something like sugar, I think you have to take into context, right? It's no added sugar. There's never been added sugar in orange juice, in Tropicana orange juice. We're leaders in innovating things like zero sugar and low sugar options. So for those consumers who do view it as a barrier, we actually have a solution for them that's really, really tasty. and all natural. So there's no reason to not believe in the growth of these brands collectively and individually.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear you kind of highlight the particular health benefits that you're seeing there. It reminds me of an article I was reading recently talking about the cereal category and sort of going through some similar headwinds, and the fact that Cheerios really sort of honed in on just that heart-healthy message really resonated with consumers. So I think a lot of credence to what you're saying. I have to ask you, though, how the toothpaste tastes, because I don't know if I can get on board with that. Have you tried it?
Send you some, yeah. I'd rather put my money on the mimosa maker, but...
Okay, fair enough. All right, well, we are down to just a couple of seconds. We started the conversation talking about the fact that you're 1 year in the role. Would love to flash forward a year from today. What will you have wanted to accomplish in order to sort of gauge and say, hey, we're on our way to success?
Yeah. A year from now, I think the evidence in the marketplace will be that we're the undisputed leader in chilled and fresh beverages in the chilled case. You'll see it in the market, you'll see it in the continued growth of our brands and their leadership position, and you'll see it in terms of mutual profitable growth for us and our retail partners.
Great. Well, a fantastic place to end. Thank you so much for joining us, Monica.
Thank you.
Thank you, all of you.